We've got a lot to do this morning, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Again, I know we've got people coming from all different areas, so if you got up super early perhaps to join us, thank you so much. Otherwise, if your day is rolling along and you are enjoying the absolutely gorgeous weather that we have here today, then again, I thank you so much for taking your time to maybe sit inside and watch this, or maybe you've grabbed your phone and you're sitting outside to catch a little bit of sunshine. So, as always, we've got another interesting program for you today. And again, I just want to thank everybody who's being part of this because, again, really short of one person that I know that has llamas, Karen, and somebody else who's particularly interested in getting llamas. I know the rest of you are just our fiber friends that are so interested in learning, which is really important to me. And I think super cool that you're willing to spend a little bit of time just to learn a little bit about our life. And of course, okay, so perfect example. What Miss Marble is exhibiting right now, which then I'm going to let her go for a second, that is her telling me that she's stressed out for the fact that I'm holding on to her. So already as is, because she's in an area and she's separated from her friends. And then the fact that I'm hanging on to her, she doesn't quite understand that. So I'm just going to let her walk around because again, that's her subtle cue to let me know that she's stressed out. She doesn't quite understand what's going on and her stress as much as possible. On the other hand, sir, oh dear, Miss Marble, you can't fit under there. You can't fit under there, my love. You're gonna have to just hang on. All right. So she is not in jeopardy of hurting herself, but we definitely are just going to keep an eye on her, of course. So that's a perfect example, too, of how much these animals are gregarious, or what we call a herd animal, meaning they want to be with their friends. That's why, for us, a standard code of ethics is never to sell a singular llama. And really, the only time it would be acceptable is if a llama was going to guard a herd of goats or a flock of sheep. And even with that, nowadays, somewhat of the principle is that even two would work great for that. So, as always, just taking content that comes to mind based on the situations that we have in front of us. But we've got a lineup of activities for you today. And I'm not even always totally sure of the outcome, but today's presentation is going to be about our breeding program here on the farm. And of course, for you, that means more cute llama babies next year, and also more great fiber, of course, we hope. So I want to be able to introduce you one by one to the girls that are going to be hopefully lined up to give birth to crias, our baby llamas, next year. And then, of course, also going through the motions of what we do here on the farm. So I'm going to catch her up for a second so she doesn't get herself caught up in any way. Just going to tie her to the fence so that way she kind of just doesn't have a choice but to stay still a little bit, just so she doesn't get herself into any kind of trouble. So a little bit of background for you in terms of course, some knowledge and education about breeding these animals. So llamas do not have a heat cycle. They also don't necessarily have a breeding season. So there are some animals like sheep, for instance, as well as goats that will actually only breed late summer through fall so that their babies are born in the springtime. Their gestation actually happens to be 5 months. Now, there are, of course, a couple of exceptions coming to mind. There are some breeds of sheep. Oh dear. Now she looks like she's hanging herself, but you know what? She's calm, she's comfortable. She let me just extend her lead just a little bit much. I know, lady. Yes, you can just sit right there then, okay? That's a very good choice. Good choices. You stay right there. All right, perfect. So, again, coming to mind, there are actually a couple breeds of sheep that can breed outside of their season. But again, for the most part, there are certain animals that you can only breed certain times of year. For these guys in particular, they actually can breed all year round because they are what we call induced ovulators. So what that means is that they actually are only going to get pregnant or release an egg through the actual act of copulation or breeding. Now, the fact that they can be bred year round is handy in some ways, but of course we want to be able to time their breeding based on where you live and also what your housing circumstances are. So for instance, I would never want an animal to be born in winter, or really even right now, we're kind of at the end of our season, which is why we're doing this as today's program. My accommodations here are so that I don't have the ability to really have these guys indoors, buckled up and nice and toasty warm if they're potentially going to give birth to a baby, let's say in the middle of December or January. So those are things to think about. Now, on the other hand, being induced ovulators, I do have a lot of friends that don't like to have llamas born in the summertime. Maybe depending on where you are, the opposite end of the spectrum is it might be a little too hot. And certainly giving birth is a stressful situation. So you definitely want to be mindful of that if you do have an animal that's going to be giving birth in the summer months, and then providing accommodations to make sure that it's as stress-free as possible. We have plenty of shade here, and that's never usually a concern of ours. Also, Layla, you're not even bred, so you cannot be making ugly faces at the boy. So behavior testing is what we're going to be doing, and taking a look at some of the different behaviors that these girls are going to give us is always entertaining. I did promise you guys an entertaining but also educational program, so it's okay if we have just a little bit of fun with it as well. So going back to the fact again, for me, because I always have a very busy spring season for shearing purposes, and it's really only been as of recently that I've had additional as well as fully capable staff to be here when an animal should be giving birth. I've always been a little reluctant to have babies being born while I'm traveling so much. So summer has always been my prime time. Also looking at, again, one of the advantages about having babies a little bit more towards the fall is oftentimes then we find ourselves having to put coats on them in order to keep them warm. And while that maybe seems like it's a little bit more trouble, I know the one thing that I like about it is it forces us to get our hands on these babies, and it desensitizes them to things like coats, putting stuff on them, stuff underneath their belly as well. And so because we do a lot of performance, which is next week's program, because we do a lot of performance with our animals, and I do like to train them all to carrying a pack, that desensitizing process is something that I do look forward to and definitely take advantage of. So there's lots of different reasons why you might want to look at when you want to breed these guys. But again, the most important thing is that, like rabbits, because rabbits are also induced ovulators, these guys, again, are going to end up releasing their egg. It's going to be fertilized through the actual act of breeding. Now, I'm hoping at this point we don't necessarily have an actual breeding to show you, but one never really knows. And so one of the things that we do is we have a pattern in which we follow that we call behavior testing. Now, back in the day, we were spending a little more time and a little more money, and we were drawing blood in order to do a progesterone test on these girls. So when they're pregnant, just like when people are pregnant, their estrogen levels are going to drop and their progesterone levels are going to increase. So being able to do a blood test would be able to give you an actual numerical value, which should lead you to believe that an animal is pregnant or not pregnant. Now, on the other hand, something that you can do, which is not always 100% foolproof, is something called behavior testing. So let's kind of go back to the beginning. So we have a llama that we want to breed. We absolutely know that this llama is not pregnant. So upon initially presenting her with the male, we should expect her to be receptive. Now, in our case, we are doing what we call hand breeding. That means by hand, I'm putting these animals together so that I am fully aware of who's being bred, what date, what response they give, what activities happen, and we do keep track of that. In other situations, people might do what's called field breeding, meaning you would have an area like this, you would have a number of females out here that you were looking to be bred, and you would release the male with them and then allow him to do his own pasture breeding or field breeding. Certainly you could track how long you have him in the pen with those girls, and that would at least give you a window of time in which you could expect to know when they're giving birth. But for me, I would really much prefer to take the time and the extra labor to be able to introduce them together, which is what we're going to do today. So when we put a male with a female, we initially are going to assume that she's going to be receptive. And so what that means is that she should very willingly, maybe after what seems like a minute or two, but probably only about 30 seconds or so, she should eventually want to go down in a cush position and then allow the male to do breeding. And so perhaps if you follow us enough on social media, you've maybe seen some pictures, videos of things like that, because on occasion we do like to post it just to have a little bit of fun. Now, after that initial breeding, I generally will wait about 4 to 7 days, usually 7 days if we've got plenty of time, in order to be able to behavior test the two of them again. So behavior testing means exactly what it sounds like. We're going to be watching the female's response. We're going to take note of her behavior and how she acts when we put her back with the male. So under most circumstances, if she is bred or her body is telling her she's not receptive, she should spit at him. So that's what we expect to see enough of today, hopefully. Now, sometimes the girls are not really quite sure, and that could be because they're young, or that could be because maybe their body's not giving them the exact signals. So sometimes we also have what we call not receptive, meaning they didn't go down to breathe, yet they also did not spit. So these are all things that we're going to look at. Now, while that sounds simple, that's only been a 7-day period. Oftentimes their body is still cycling. And so we're not totally sure that they have fully maintained a pregnancy at that point. So essentially every week or every 7 days, at least 4 to 7 days, we will take the time to present the female to the male to again behavior test and see what we have. Oftentimes I do find if the girls are not going to maintain their pregnancy, by the time we get to week 2, they become open or they are receptive again. Now, on the other hand, if we still continue to get a negative response from the female, we really still want to check her and make sure that within a 30-day period, we have a negative response from her. Generally, by the time you get to a month from the time that you bred her initially to where we are behavior testing, if you've got a month's period in there, it is safer to assume that that female should be bred and will maintain her pregnancy. So after a month, we're not quite so inclined to check on a regular basis, but we definitely are going to check when we have the time. And I will usually continue to check until we get to the end of the breeding season, which is what we have today. Because at some point in time, like now, it's November 10th, 11th, I don't know, one of those. And so what we're going to assume is that if we bred somebody today, for all intents and purposes, that means they're going to give birth at the end of October, beginning of November. And that's really getting to be about the latest I would want a cria to be born, because of course it's kind of unseasonable today's weather. The weather does go up and down, but I do want to be mindful of that. So now, while I maybe have a couple of girls that I'm pretty sure is bred, we want to check them one more time before we go into winter. Once we hit winter, I am no longer going to behavior test, because the reality is if somebody comes up open, then I'm not going to be rebreeding them anyway. So we leave them alone, we let them be. Hopefully they continue to build and maintain their pregnancy throughout the winter. And then once we get to the spring and we are back in a viable breeding season, we will then go and behavior test them again. Remember, their gestation, or if you did not know, is 11 and a half months, or we use 345 days as our parameters, if you will. Now, with that, that still means they could give birth 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after. So that's kind of the window of time that we're looking at. And so because it's such a long gestation, I've certainly had it where we went into winter thinking a female was pregnant. We hit springtime. We go ahead and behavior test again, and she has slipped, as we will call it. Generally, at that early stage, they are not aborting an embryo for you to find. They're simply reabsorbing any potential pregnancy. So we call that slipped. Now, remember everybody as well, because of course we've got a lot of content. Should anybody have a question or you have a thought at the moment that I say something, don't hesitate to unmute yourself and talk over me, because as most of you well know at this point, since you've been with us week to week, you know I always have a lot to say, and we've got a lot to do. So that's a little bit about the background of what we've done thus far leading up to today. And then again, we've got a number of females, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then number 6 in there, lined up to potentially behavior test today. Now, I also usually tell people that we have anywhere from 3 to 5 babies, 3 to 5 Kriyas a year. So our numbers are up a little bit this year. That's 2 reasons. One, we've been having trouble actually with 2 of our girls trying to get them bred. So we wanted to keep moving with some other potential females. The one thing I really want to try to avoid is having just one Kriya born, because I always want that baby to have a playmate, just for obvious reasons. And it's just natural and healthy in terms of their growth and development. And also in terms of them looking for a friend. You know, mom is not usually the friend. And if you have a younger female, like a yearling, you know, that certainly could be a friend, but nobody is going to run and play like that baby. So we want to make sure that we at least have 2 Kriyas born. Now, I've been doing this long enough that I also know that even though we might have 3 or 4 Kriyas due, even up to the point of gestation, I have to account for the fact that unfortunately something could go wrong with any one of those. And that's just the reality of it. I'm not a Debbie Downer, but that's just how I try to practically plan for things. Also, right now, the demand is starting to increase a little bit for llamas, which is a great thing. So again, I'm not looking to overpopulate the world, and I'm very conscious about my breeding and my breeding program, but I would like to have some babies because I'd like to keep them for myself, as well as have some to be able to sell for other potential owners as well. So that's a little bit why we've got such a lineup here. Now, Sir Arthur is the man of the hour. We are a small breeding farm. I don't have a lot of space. There's the man of the hour. And so, interestingly enough, while we do have another male, Evan, I haven't yet quite decided if I'm going to use him for our breeding program. Right now, Sir Arthur is doing a really wonderful job for us in terms of what I'm looking for. He's very correct conformationally, which is important. We want a good, strong, sound animal, good straight legs. We want an animal that's going to have longevity because their body is put together well. The other thing, of course, we're all fiber lovers. He puts beautiful fiber on his babies. And while I think his fiber is great, I think the fiber on his babies are even better. And then also taking a female that might not have exceptional fiber quality, he's definitely improving that, which is a really good thing. And then last but not least, but also most importantly to me, is personality. He really has a great personality, even though he always has a pissy face. Right now he has a happy face. He won't have a happy face in a few minutes, but right now he has a happy face on. But even though he has a little bit of a sour look sometimes with his ears back, that's just his face. He gets it from his grandma. We met his mom, and we know that that's the face he gets from his mom. But personality wise, he really, really is a gentle soul. So even as an intact male, we can use him for youth programs. He is trained to do performance, and he's excellent at it. And he's just a good all around boy. And his babies all seem to have great temperaments as well. So that's why we are busy using him for our program. Some of these girls are actually just going to be having their first Sir Arthur babies. Other girls are not going to be having Sir Arthur babies, but we are still enjoying using his services. And so that's the primary reason why we're using him. Also, for the fact that you need to use an intact male in order to do this behavior testing. So with that, we are going to start, because we do have quite a lineup and there's going to be a lot of hustle and bustle happening here. Now, this is a bizarre way to start off this program. So this is where we can have a little bit of fun with this. But Ms. Marble, you're going to have to relax, my love. So everybody, if you have not already had the opportunity to meet Ms. Marble, this is Ms. Marble. She's our new addition to the farm. Now, the interesting part about it, of course, which we can have a little chuckle, is this is Sir Arthur's grandmother. And yes, we are going to use him to behavior test her. Now, of course, should she go down, which we know she's not going to, should she go down and want to be bred, we would absolutely not allow that to happen. But he is the male that we are using for behavior testing. He has no idea this is his grandmother, so let's just not tell him, okay? All he's going to know, he's going to have a really pissed off girl that wants nothing to do with him. Now, you might also say, why did I go and buy his grandmother? I just love him so much. I love the strength and what he has to offer. And so I wanted to also get those genetics in my dam line, knowing that I can't ever, of course, breed the two of these guys together. So Ms. Marble, I purchased her bred. So she she is bred to another male, and his name is Doc, right? Is it Doc P? We have to look at that. I still haven't gotten the paperwork yet. And she is due for early spring. That's the only information I have right now. I did purchase her from a friend of mine, so I know that they're good for it, and we'll get additional detailed information. So aside from the fact that she has the ugliest haircut, I did not shear her. She's got no tail. She got like choppiness all around her head. But as I've said to you guys before, the interesting thing is you can see her coloring is exactly like Benji's coloring, or Benji's coloring is exactly like her. Now, the other thing is my friend Nick wanted to sell her because he said she was a bit of a bully, and she was kind of a bully on the playground to the other llamas, but she's been absolutely lovely here. And that's probably because she's met a little bit of her matches with the likes of Olive and Maria. But she's been absolutely no problem for us. And I actually have no problem handling her. So we just love her. So now this is normally a two-person job. So here's what's going to happen. I am going to have Miss Marble here, and I'm going to let her roam free in the pen. I'm going to have to go get Sir Arthur, because normally Karen and I would do this together, but Karen has to, of course, woman the camera. And so I'm going to get Sir Arthur and bring him in. Now, we did behavior test her on the 1st. It is 9 days later. Now, presumably she went through a lot of stress coming all the way from Iowa. I know she's getting a lot of stress right now, but she could have lost her pregnancy just from moving to a new location. And so we wanted to be sure that she maintained that pregnancy after she had time to settle in here. So the fact that she is cushing right now is not about the fact that she's ready to be bred. It's more about the fact that she's not happy that she's in here and by herself. She is 13 years old, so she's wise enough to know that something is about to happen. She's just really not sure what. So I'm going to go get Sir Arthur so that we can take her stress away and get a chance to give you guys a look at behavior testing. And then we'll certainly release her and let her go back with the group. So while I'm going to get Sir Arthur, of course, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump on in.
Why wasn't Evan a choice?
So Karen doesn't, I keep telling Karen she's got to put her earpiece in. Evan is Karen's boy. So somebody just asked, why wasn't Evan a choice? So for me, when I look at different things, I absolutely love Evan for some of his qualities. He has more height than Sir Arthur. He has a much better top line and tail set than Sir Arthur. He has a great personality. His fiber's okay. And actually his sire is a very well-known sire owned by my friend Carol. Where I don't love his traits are in his legs. One of the things that we look for is width between their front and rear legs. This is actually super important. That's why width and straightness and correctness through the legs is really more important than all of the other things. And so right now I feel like using him on most of my females would be taking a step down. My females that I do think he might be great with would be Olive and Locketta, because both of them have good width, but they don't have a lot of height. So that could be something that we're going to look at. Neither of these girls are in the breeding rotation at this point in time. So that's why I have not used him yet. Plus, again, Sir Arthur still has not seen the likes of all of these girls. So we're still busy using him and trying to get his babies on the ground, which also right now are a little more sought after as well. So that's to answer that question. So what I want you guys to start to look at, because these are legitimate, while it's entertaining, these are legitimate things that we look at and we listen to. You can start to see and hear his face and his actions. He's doing what we call clucking. So he's kind of gesturing to the girl. Also, you can start to take a look at some of Ms. Marble's reactions as well. Now, one of the things is sometimes girls can give mixed responses. Sometimes they say no when they don't mean no. And I'm really sorry, guys. This is... So what I have to do, sorry if my back is to anybody, what I have to do is really make sure that Miss Marble means it. And so for me, I really want her to spit several times so that she just does not opt to change her mind. Now, what you're noticing, oh, I can't, they're laughing
Her spit got
hysterically.
air.
Oh, I'm trying to get them off. This is normally a
She looks like
two-person
a
job.
steam engine.
Go away, Miss Marble.
Oh,
Oh. All right, this is why I normally have Karen. There we go. Oh, I was like, Miss Marble, leave. Woo. All right. Ugh. This was why I brought a rag. So Karen,
Ew.
so it was this, you have no idea. It smells putrid. So, so yes, this is my job. And one of the things that we also look for is the fact that, so the gobs of spit was not just spit. Karen can show you pictures on the fence. So that is actually her ability. They're like, ew. That is her ability to actually pull up her stomach contents and spit that. So normally that's what she ruminates. And when they are really, really pissed off, that is the spit you're going to get. Guys, they do have just an air spit, which is really no bother whatsoever. So Karen and I always say we're going to make $1 million by, well, I don't know, maybe there probably are clear umbrellas. There are clear. So we keep saying we need to get a clear umbrella to be able to do this. Yeah. So now, unfortunately, I have a pissed off llama that I have to catch. Usually they do understand that I'm not going to do anything to them. Good girl. Sometimes you do get spit at. Stand. You're fine, sweetie. Good girl. All right, we're going to go release you. Okay. So I'm going to, poor Ms. Marble's face is disgusting. So sometimes though, guys, they do spit and they don't really mean it. So we really, really have to make sure that she means it. And so again, my apologies for my back to you guys at any point in time, but she really meant it. She is clucking, clucking, clucking. She is pissed off. Okay, so now we're going to assume, we're going to assume that she's going to hang on to that pregnancy because she is due in early spring. So we will certainly, of course, actually, you know, we might not need to check her again, because now what you have to realize as I'm thinking through this, so by the time we are even going to behavior test again, one would assume that her belly is really going to start to expand. She's going to really start to show an increase in weight. She already has a very round body, but we'll visibly see signs that she is bred, I would assume. So we probably won't have to re-behavior test her again unless we have any question about it. Okay, so that was woman number 1 down. Now, I think we're going to get Mackenzie, and we'll tell you guys a little bit about Mackenzie. Come here, mama. Okay. So this is Mackenzie. So Mackenzie as well, she has to go and return back to that pen anyway. So we are going to slight subject her to a little bit of torture, although she could have potentially lost her pregnancy somewhere along the way. I will double check my notes, which my clipboard is in there that got knocked over by Ms. Marble. But Mackenzie was one of our earliest ones that we bred, and actually she took, meaning she got pregnant on her first time. So this is Stewie's mom, for anybody that knows Stewie, hopefully, and he was hanging out here in the corner, but he's since left since he realized he was not part of this process at all. So Mackenzie is getting older. This is more than likely going to be her last cria. And I would have to double check. I think she's 16. I think you're 16, ma'am. She is one of my favorites. I try not to tell the rest of them. So she's one of the ones that will always be here and stay here, of course, until the day she dies. But all of her babies are wonderful. If you guys have any of our totes or pillows with Fife and that was actually one of her boys. That was also the groom in our wedding, if you've seen our iconic wedding picture. Gordon was her last cria, who we have since sold, and he's gone on to do some great social work. as part of his new life career. We are really hoping that this is a girl in here. And the only reason being is because she is getting older. This will probably be her last Kriya. And even though we are going to maintain Stewie in our program, I really would love to be able to have a girl from her to be able to continue to breed and continue on her genetics and her legacy. Now, mind you, my chances are probably pretty low because in all of the Kriyas that she has had, she's actually like one girl, and that girl lives in upstate New York. I still keep in touch with her whereabouts. Actually, we called her Tank. She has since been bred and a number of times and has had children of her own. So at least in that respect, her legacy does live on that way. So we would expect her to give us a negative response. She is supposed to be due for, I want to say early July. I don't know. Let's get our notes. Let me see. Try not to shock myself here. Okay. So Mackenzie, yes. So Mackenzie, we bred her. Would you like to read your notes? Mackenzie, we bred her on July 6th. She went down quickly. They bred for quite a while. And ever since then, she's been spitting. So she would actually be due for potentially late June if she actually read the book and carried to 345 days. So we are going to go ahead and put her in just to be able to give you that response and then put her back in the pen where she belongs. Now, I will say, while she is usually unhappy with this, she's not quite as passionate about her response as Ms. Marble. But again, you want to look at her behavior, her body language. Of course, she's not looking pleased about the thoughts to begin with. And we'll go ahead and get Sir Arthur. Oh, Sir Arthur's going to have a bad day here. Now, the interesting thing is that sometimes Sir Arthur will take no for an answer, and I never know why that is, meaning I don't know who he responds to. You would think that Ms. Marble, being very much a senior and having a very strong personality, would get him to back off. But for whatever reason, whether it's because he just got rejected by Ms. Marble, which I doubt, but he knows like she means business. They also can smell to some degree and can determine pregnancy that way, because I've had some males that you'll present them with a female, they'll walk in, I don't know, take a smell, and then they'll just walk away. They're like, I'm not going to bother, bring me somebody else. That girl is done. So he clearly is trying to move on to other prospective ladies because he's not interested in Mackenzie. Now, if I didn't already know that Mackenzie was bred, I would potentially try to push the issue, but I know she's good to go. So rather than torture anybody anymore, we're going to tie him back up. We're going to say, please have a girl, Mackenzie. Please, please, please. And we're going to put her back in the pen. So again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. One of the other fun things, if you will, is that you'll start to see some of the behaviors of the girls or the babies around the pen as the activities go on. Oftentimes, if a female is receptive, they'll actually lay down along the fence line, kind of insinuating that they want their turn. Meanwhile, on the other side of us over, oh, he just left. But our senior stud Count, who's now retired, he kind of knows what's happening. So sometimes I feel bad. Maybe he's insulted that he's not getting an opportunity anymore. So we try to tell him he's handsome and beautiful and the girls still love him. Okay. Now, okay. I'm like, now what do we do? All right, so now we're going to do Georgia. So here's the story with Georgia. Georgia is his daughter, so now it's just getting worse. However, we are, again, still going to utilize him for behavior testing. Now, with Georgia, just a little bit of her background. She's what we call a maiden. She's just 2. She was just 2 in October. I know it sounds terrible. And Karen, if you're listening, this was Carol's fault. When we were on our way home from Iowa, because as silly as it sounds, I'm such a baby and she's our baby. And I'm like, oh, should we go ahead and breed her? And so Georgia travels with another llama of Carol's. And when we go to shows, her llama is Ebony and Ivory. And Georgia, they compete together. They're basically the same age. So Carol said she was breeding Ebony. So I'm like, okay, well, we might as well go ahead and breed Georgia. And because I really don't have anybody here that I want to breed her to, then we decided to use one of Carol's females. So Layla is not helping us. Karen is panning over so that you can see what's going on over there because Layla is not bred. She is very receptive. So she, of course, is literally putting her butt in his face in order to gain his attention. So to get back to Georgia, now Georgia is a maiden, so we're not really sure how to read her body language. When I did breed her for the first time, it's often difficult. They don't understand what's going on. So there is usually spitting happening, even though we know they're not bred. Eventually, she did go down to breed and she was fine through the breeding process. So honestly, ever since then, we have tried to behavior test her and she does spit, but she could also just be confused. So we really might not have any clear signs for Georgia. The only thing we can say is that her overall attitude has changed. So I'm not really sure if she's just pissed off at us that we did this to her, or if her body is going through changes and so she's a little confused. Because now she will come up to the fence and she wants to greet people and see people like she always has, but she'll start clucking, she'll put her ears back and she'll puff out her cheeks, and that's not normal behavior for her. So these are just some things that we try to observe in the process. And I think more than likely, we're just going to have to kind of ride it out and see if she. So Layla is clearly raring to go. And Sir Arthur is very upset that there's a fence in his way. And if this is not entertaining you guys, I don't know what will, because he is trying to do the motions, but there's a fence in his way and he's just so upset about that. I can't make this stuff up. All right. I hope you guys are having a little bit of fun with it because it, of course, is comical. Now, Georgia does not live in this pen, so we're going to try to get Sir Arthur's attention away from Layla, and then we're going to just see what her behavior tells us. Sir Arthur, dear. There's nothing happening. No, there's nothing happening. You can't get to her right now. Come on, you got to get up. There. Look, new girl.
Is he orgling or chuckling?
No, he's orgling. He is orgling like there is no tomorrow.
That's what I thought.
So as a young animal, Georgia doesn't necessarily know what her response is supposed to be. So that's why she was running around at first. Now I'm really going to continue to let her spit for a few because I really want to see if she means that or if she does go to lay down to potentially be bred. Of course, if she does go down to be bred, I'll pull him off because I know she's looking at me like, save me. I know. All right. So I'm just going to take note of her behavior. Again, even if she did go down to breed, I'm not breeding her with him, and I don't have anybody here for her to breed anyway. But I also wanted you guys just to see some of the changes because remember, Ms. Marble was very vehemently opposed. We put Mackenzie in, and then he did not even take a look at Mackenzie. So something about that he knew in order to back off and not even pursue, yet he pursued Georgia again. So these are just all different responses that personally I find interesting and all part of the process, of course. And again, really important for you guys to see that as long as you have an animal that's trained and handled properly, I do expect my males to be respectful. I've seen other males that are not. So he knows his job, but he knows ultimately I'm in charge. And so he's being very nice, just kind of standing here waiting for his next thing. So I'm going to tie him over here because I don't want, Layla can't get over here to lay down. So we're going to keep that from being a distraction for him. I know. I know. Now, George, Lorelai is laying down next to Layla. For those of you guys that don't know, so this is the whole family tree right here. Georgia is Layla's daughter, and then Lorelai is Georgia's full sister. Oh dear. Okay, so now we have Laquetta. Oh my Lord. I was gonna say, if nobody breeds that we have lined up, we're gonna throw one of these girls in for you guys to be able to see. Clearly, this is the response that you want. You want the girls to lay down. You want them to be open and receptive. Of course, now we've got Benji on top of mom because he is, oh no, that's not mom. That's right. Oh my gosh. So Benji has been experimenting. He can't do anything, so we're not going to worry about that. Oh my gosh, let me get Georgia out of here. We have mayhem, everybody. This is breeding on the farm. Okay.
Betsy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you guys are allowed to unmute yourself and laugh for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Well, so the Karen's panning in on that for you guys. So the thing that we've not been able to get video yet is the new baby, the little guy. He actually has been getting on top of Benji and like trying to practice his little boy things, which is just quite hysterical because then Benji is sort of stuck. And then Benji, you could just see the look on Benji's face like, oh my gosh. And essentially, I feel like, karma is a bitch. So it's been pretty funny to see Benji sort of tolerate the new baby doing this to him. But again, these are good things because these are the things that you want to see. First of all, let's say Benji was going to go on to be a stud for somebody, not that he is, but you want to see that your male has that masculinity and the tendency to want to do that. You want to see your open girls laying down and being receptive to be bred. So let's move on to our last two girls that we have here because these are the two girls that have been giving us a little bit of trouble. So I'll give you a little bit of background story. So we've got Cher, who was Caden's mom. Caden actually would be 2.5 now, I think, if my memory serves me correct. Caden is the young guy that we did have to put down just at the early onset of the pandemic. Not related to that, of course, but just related to his own difficulties over the course in time. So where that leads in is because her last birth was very difficult. It was a dystocia. So there were a lot of difficulties. There was a lot of pulling, tugging, all sorts of things happening. And we've actually been having trouble getting her bred since then. Last year, we were pretty busy, so we weren't trying a whole lot, but we did thought we had her bred coming into the winter, just like now, this time last year. So then we let her go. And then when we behavior tested her in the spring, we found that she was open. So we've now been working actually since July, trying to breed her again. And she will seemingly be pregnant. Actually, she was pregnant for about a month and then she slipped. And then she was pregnant. Let me get my notes actually. So yeah, we bred her right about the same time as Mackenzie. She was actually, we bred her on July 11th and she spit all the way through August. And then we tested her again in early September and she went down to breed. So then ever since then, she's been coming up that she's pregnant for about 2 weeks and then she goes down again. So she loses that pregnancy, which is okay, but not necessarily common. So we bred her again on September 8th. She spit for about 2 weeks. Then we tested her on October 11th and she spit. And then she went down to breed again at the end of October. And we didn't breed her. And then on November 1st, we bred her. So I'm not really sure where we stand with her. I have not done anything. I have to look at Karen. We didn't get Cher on any sort of antibiotics or anything like that. So really at this point, I haven't been pushing the issue. I haven't done anything medically or anything exploratory because I'm not sure that I want to. I am a little bit of a believer of that maybe her body is saying, look, last time was just a little too tough and maybe we don't want to push that envelope. So at this point, if she ends up being open, I'm probably not going to let her breed because more than likely we might otherwise just take somebody else and throw them in because the chances of her maintaining that pregnancy and wasting today's breeding is that she probably won't hold. Now, on the other hand, we've got Stella back here. So Stella is Franny's mom. And so Stella has been pregnant once. She gave birth to Franny. There was nothing wrong with that birthing process, but ever since then, we've been having trouble getting her bred. And that's okay. So what we did was she was actually, as I'm looking at my notes, she just kept breeding. She never had a negative response. She thought it was recreational. So she would breed, which animals do not do recreational breeding. Their bodies are not supposed to allow for that. So what we did was we gave her Estramate because she could have had something with her hormones that were unbalanced from her last pregnancy, and we just wanted to get her back into cycle. So we gave her Estramate, which is an estrogen shot. Yes, and then Karen's reminding me, which I did know that as well. We also decided to put her on penicillin because sometimes they could have a low-grade infection from their previous birth that obviously isn't bothering them in any way, but is keeping them from getting pregnant. So we did both of those things to her. Then the last time we bred her was on October 26th. Now, I will tell you that there was a day not too long ago that we were walking Sir Arthur by, and I feel like we got a negative response from her. So I might not be totally surprised if we get that from her now, and maybe that means everything we did to her worked and just got her back on track. So I think we're going to try Stella first and see what we get from her. Come here, lady. Now, this would be Stella's first baby to Sir Arthur, which is really one of the reasons why I purchased her. We did breed her to count. When we got her, she was a youngster. She was only a year old. So we waited until she was old enough to be bred and then count at that time. So she actually has the last count daughter who we are retaining right now in our program, just to see how Franny develops. And that if she ends up being something that we want to breed for our program, just to be able to continue on with a little bit of count in our lines. So she's always a little flaky to begin with, so I don't think her response is necessarily telling me anything right now. So we're gonna bring her in and we're gonna see what we get from her. So let me get this lead out of the way. Stella's also a little bit dippy. She doesn't really love this lead hanging in front of her, but she's getting used to it. All right. Obviously, she's unsuspecting at the moment. So right away, we have a different response. She, again, is a little dippy. So we are certainly not getting any yay or nay from her. And she's going to probably go down. Come here, buddy, for a second. Hang on, because I want to do share for a second. Come here. Okay. So I'm going to leave her in here. I'm going to get share because I do want to see what share's response is. And then I think ultimately, if I had to choose, I'll probably let him breed Stella. Although again, I'm like wondering why Stella is not maintaining a pregnancy. She obviously was able to get pregnant. She had a cria. So that's something that we might have to look at because she is young and still would have a lot of viable time left to be a mom. So we're going to get him to hang on a second. There's all sorts of madness going on around here.
Poor guy.
What?
I said, poor
Oh.
guy.
Yeah, I know. He's not having a good day. So Karen also reminded me, she said, don't forget about I will probably, I think ultimately for time-wise, I'm not going to be so concerned. Maria should be bred. Karen and I can always behavior test her before we put Sir Arthur back. We didn't want to leave JC alone. They are still in what would be like quarantine, but it's mostly to keep JC contained so she's not running and playing and affecting her incision. So we do need to behavior test Maria. But again, for time's sake, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to go get Cher. Now, Cher is a very experienced mom. So one of the things that we know about Cher is that if she is open, she's open. I will barely be able to get her through the gate and she'll just fall right down. She's what we call easy. I hope you guys are having fun with this, but of course it's educational and there's total validity to it, but that doesn't mean we can't have a good time with it also.
I'm giggling so much. That's why I have myself muted.
Me as well. Me as well.
No problem.
Me too.
Now, Cher has no sorts of pissed off lookingness going on, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I don't normally just let girls run around in here together, but Cher's like coming over to him, so that's certainly a sign. Oh, see, now Cher changed her mind and he's going for Stella. See, look, she's like, go ahead, try me. Huh. No. Let's see what she does. So he wants to go to Stella, but I'm trying to get a negative response from Cher, and I feel like that I am getting that. So I'm gonna come here. Come here. Turn around. All right. So change in plans quick. Bear with me, everybody. I'm gonna quick tie up Stella, so she'll stay out of the way. Karen's jumping in to help. There we go. Okay. So I will tie her up. Yeah, if you want to go do that, sure. Thanks, guys. Bear with us. Hopefully we're not making you nauseous here. We're pulling Stella out because I want him to solely focus on Cher. He's still looking for Stella.
How heavy is Sir Arthur? I saw you pulling so hard. I'm curious.
Well, yeah, because he is definitely, so he's only about, what, 230, Karen, Sir Arthur's weight? She's the one that usually, because she's weighing and stuff. So he's not that he's that heavy, but I mean, he wants what he wants. So he's strong, but it's not that he is being disrespectful. And once I get a handle on him, then he does settle in. So normally he's like, that girl is making me work too much. I don't want her. Normally Cher would go down. So I'm actually surprised. So again, what did I say? We bred her last on the 1st, I think I said. I'll have to look at my notes. So, we're not in the clear with her, but this is definitely a negative response for her. And he is definitely also not as interested looking. So he's like, please. And she's like, no. And he's like, oh, like he knows he's going to get spit at. So he wants to try.
He is.
Okay.
He is all like, ooh.
It is like shiny things. He's like, all right.
The persistence.
Yeah, he's trying. So we're gonna, of course, now Stewie is over here trying to figure out what's going on. So we're gonna it's okay, Cher. It's okay. You're fine. We just need you to come out. We need you to come out. Good girl. Awesome. Okay. We're gonna switch these guys out. Karen's gonna take Cher. Stella's gonna come in. Now, more than likely, I'll let Stella breed, but I'm certainly not hopeful. I guess I should be a little more optimistic. But at least if nothing else, now you guys will get a chance to see it breeding. Because Stella thinks this is just fun.
Tabitha, on one of your videos, you had to help the male a little bit. Does that happen every time?
Yeah, it does. That's why I was going to say then you guys can laugh at me even more. I know now you guys are never going to want to, don't worry, you can't hug me now anyway. So, and I do wash my hands. So the thing is, Sir Arthur hates this. They all hate it, actually. All right, well, he's already in on his own. There. So, I'll take Cher from you. We can just at least get her out of the way. So Karen, if you want to go on in for a second, that way everybody can get a little bit of a close up while I just tie Cher up so we have some free hands. So the reason why we do get in there to assist, he certainly doesn't need any help, is just to make sure that he is in the right area. So one of the things that you might have noticed is that Stella did have her tail wrapped. And so that was to keep the hair out of the way. While I've never had it happen, one of the things that can happen, to give you a little more information than you probably needed to know today, is that the penis of the male llama is actually very small. and it's very thin. It's really not even any bigger than your pinky. And so the tip, the tip, there's like a cartilaginous tip on it. And so it has been known to happen that as he's trying to breed, it is very swirly, like going like this, trying to find where to go. All the comical though, he could be doing that in her hair. And so I do know one person in particular, actually my mentor, had a male where a little piece of the hair got wrapped around the tip of the penis and actually severed it. So I know, right? So by wrapping the tail, you're at least eliminating some of that and also obviously opening up that area so that it's easy for him to find where he needs to go. Now, on occasion, they find the wrong hole. So you do also want to make sure that he's in the right place. Now, he is more experienced, but the other day we were actually breeding some llamas over at my friend's farm, and her male is inexperienced, and he was actively breeding in her haunch fiber and thought he was doing a great job until I got in and repositioned him. And then you should have seen the change in his face. Then he was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. So sometimes they just don't really know when they're inexperienced. He knows, of course. And so once he actually is in the proper place, you'll see, you know, again, these are things we have to look for. He'll pull his hips in. So you'll notice he does have a little action going on in his hip area. You also will hear the orgling. So remember at the top of the program, I did say that these guys are what we call induced ovulators. So the orgling, along with, now he's not a very active massager. Yeah, Karen says he's really bad at massaging. Normally with their front legs, they will move their legs back and forth and kind of massage either side of the female's shoulders. So that movement of the legs along with the orgling is supposed to be what is getting her to release her egg for it to then be fertilized, and then of course for her to be able to maintain pregnancy. So somewhere something for her is not going right. And I will at some point have to decide, you know, how much I want to invest in being able to get her bred. Now we've got everybody. Benji's having a field day. New babies, like, what's happening? Everybody's getting in on the action. And then, of course, Laketta and Layla are still laying down, ready to be rebred and wishing that it was their turn, although it is not. We're going to let them ride out until next spring. So he is now going to continue to do this for however long he decides. They are what we call drip ejaculators. So again, more information that I'm sure you guys need. Hopefully you're done with breakfast, but they will deposit small amounts of semen over a longer period of time. So we'll leave them here. Hopefully they'll be done by the 1 o'clock homeschool tour. I'm sure they will be. Generally, it is about maybe a half an hour, at most 45 minutes. But they will breed over that period of time. You know, ultimately when he's done, he's done. Sometimes he'll get up, reposition, go back to it again. Sometimes the female will kind of change her position, depending on the process and how it's feeling for her. But when they're done, then he won't bother with her anymore. You know, he's sort of done and satisfied, and they could just hang out here and coexist peacefully if we left them and came back to check on them 3 hours from now. So that's why once they're in this position, you know, we'll let them finish their job and give them their time. Everybody else around will care less and probably be thankful it's not them, except if you're Layla and Laketta. And we always find it a little comical because Stella actually looks quite pleasant about the whole thing. That's kind of how she looks every time. But generally speaking, it's if there was grass in front of her, she'd probably be eating. Oftentimes, one of my professors that I work with said that it looks like the female's making her grocery list. So they otherwise are rather uninterested in the process, and it's ours that will do all of the work. So now you guys had a chance to see a little bit of everything. We will certainly keep you posted on this. Again, I'm not optimistic that this is going to result in anything. Of course, it would be great if it did. But at this point in time, this will be the end of what we'll be doing here on the farm until things warm up again next spring, and certainly be checking everybody and monitoring them throughout the winter with regards to their weight. So I think if nothing else, I hope that, you guys will continue to follow us and then feel a little bit more a part of the process when the babies are born next year. So with that, I do want to leave the few minutes that we have. I do have to be timely today. We actually have a reporter coming today, and I've got an hour's break in between. We've got a homeschool program, as I just mentioned, at 1 o'clock. I have to shear my other goat copy, so she'll be done today. So we've got a jam-packed day. But any questions that anybody might have about everything?
What's the how do you breed for fiber? What do you look for in both of the llamas that you try to create?
Well, when you look at llamas, there are lots of different fiber types. There's a lot of variety. So we have everything from more of the classic style light wool llamas. We have medium wool and heavy wool, which really just refers to the coverage. So we are now extending coverage on the face, on the legs. Then we also have found over time, our original llamas had a very heavy guard hair, and we've been breeding that to be a lesser amount or a finer guard hair. We then have what we call silkies, which is what Sir Arthur is. Stella's, I'm trying to think. She didn't really have a silky appearance to her fiber in terms of the way it drapes, but she has a very, very soft fiber. So she probably has a lower micron count. So for me personally, I'm not as much of a fan of Surrey llamas. That's another type of fiber. Actually, Cher is a Surrey llama in terms of the way her fiber looks. So I think overall, I'm looking for more of that silky type llama. I like a finer fiber, a lower micron count, if you will. And you can just do that really pretty much by feel. So a lower guard hair, a softer guard hair, that's kind of, what I like. And so for instance, Benji, his mom Olive is a basic medium wool, doesn't really have a softer fiber. That's not what I bought her for. But Sir Arthur bred to her has given us Benji, and you can see an obvious improvement in the fiber quality if you've had a chance to see Benji in the multitude of stories that he puts himself in. So, I mean, I think for me, I like to have variety, but I'm also, again, looking for that softer fiber, which is something we're still improving upon in our llamas as we move through. In the end, conformation is more important. Personality is more important to me. So, that fiber is just something that we're also looking at. Color-wise, I don't particularly care. I love a variety of color. As Karen's laughing behind the camera, Sir Arthur tends to pass off this reddish brown color. We do kind of joke. Stewie, Georgia, Lorelei, Benji, all of these guys are in the reddish brown hue, if you will. So that's certainly a genetic trait of his, which just shows his prepotency and his strength and his genetics. So that's about it, really, as far as for fiber. I mean, I think it's a personal preference, and I think it just depends on what you're looking for and whether or not that's something that's important to you. So,
Gotcha.
Quick
any
question.
other questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If a maiden gives you a hard time about breeding, I know that's not unusual, but is it any sign of what kind of mother she's going to be too? If there's going to be confusion there?
No.
Okay.
No, I generally find that that's not the case. It's just literally like, holy crow, what is happening to me? There's some man chasing me and doing weird things to me. They don't understand they're supposed to go down. So it is a struggle oftentimes trying to breed a maiden. I don't remember, we bred Stella. I don't remember having that much trouble getting her going with the process. So that's why it's a little strange that she's having trouble now, but she was a great mom. Of course, when they're giving birth for the first time, they are also confused about that. So it's kind of heartbreaking, until they ultimately see the baby, and then they're just like, oh, that must be mine. And then all of that kicks in. Now, that's not to say that that's going to be the case. So maidens, for instance, for me, I generally will not purchase a young animal or a maiden because I don't have a lot of capital resources nor a lot of space on my farm to necessarily take the chance on a female that might or might not be able to be bred or might not have a good mothering ability. But of course, having said that, I've done that along the way, and Stella was a perfect example. So, you know, it's just things you have to think about, because there's certainly a risk if that female has never been a mom before, but I don't think any correlation at all. So,
Okay.
a good
Who was
question.
Georgia bred to?
So Georgia, I'm hoping, well, so I'm hoping Georgia's bred to Hailstorm.
Oh.
That is Zephyr's son. The reason why I didn't breed her to Zephyr, I'm assuming, is that Karen who's asking the question?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I can't see, but I figured that's who it was. So for instance, my choices for Georgia, Carol is looking to have more crias out of both Escalero and Zephyr because they're getting older. Zephyr is a really beautiful male with an absolutely gorgeous fiber, but he has a very calm personality, very mild, and he doesn't have a lot of presence, or he doesn't have a lot of pop to himself. Georgia already is very dull and like you know, she's a pretty chill kind of llama. So I was looking for just a little bit of spark to add to her in terms of the way she carries herself. So that's why we bred her to Hailstorm, which was Zephyr's son. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I have no idea if she's bred. I can't tell. So bit of a crapshoot. Any other questions?
Yeah, you said llama spit smells bad?
Yes.
Oh, is
Yeah.
that what makes it
So there's
effective?
two. Yeah, so there's two spits. You get an air spit, which is there just warning you. And then the spit that they really mean it, or they're really pissed off, is they are pulling up their rumen, their gut
Oh.
contents. And that is what they're spitting. And it smells putrid and it stays with you for quite some time. So yeah, that's the only bad part about the whole spitting thing. But under normal circumstances, they have to really, really be pissed off in order to do that, which Miss Marble was. So, guys, with that, I hate to say, normally I'm generous with my time, even though this is a 1-hour program. We had a lot of content, and we did have a couple of great questions, and I appreciate you guys jumping in. Just because of the nature of my busy day, I do need to be able to go. But as you can see, there are always easily part B and part C. There's so many things that we do. Just to let you guys know, next week, while we still have some nice weather, we are going to be doing an introduction to performance with our llamas. Now, there's 1,000,001 chapters that I could do on that topic, but we want to just start to introduce you to what we do with our llamas when we say we do performance with them, what that's about, what it involves, obviously being able to demonstrate some things for you. There's a lot of divisions to that, but we thought we would start as sort of an introduction next week. We're kind of saving some of our fiber things for as things start to get a little colder outside, or if we get a rainy day, we can certainly switch up content so that we can, you know, do something indoors. So again, I can't thank you enough. I know that these are a lot of the same faces each time, which I so appreciate. Please tell a friend. I definitely want new people to get on board. I know you guys must be enjoying it because you keep coming back each week, which I love, and thank you for the support. And I know you guys had fun today, and we're just excited because this means babies. So stay tuned and continue to follow us. And I hope you guys have a great rest of this beautiful day. So
Thank you,
You too,
Tabitha.
Tabitha.
Thank
all
you.
Thank
Bye.
bye,
so much.
everybody. No problem. My pleasure.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, take care.
Bye.
Have a good meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Bye-bye.